there. Welcome to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I'm quite delighted to have Emily Griswold with me. Emily, welcome.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
We've been trying to do this for a little bit, so I'm really happy that we are both here.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
Before we get started today, tell the good people a little bit about yourself and your work and all that.
Yeah. So, as the wonderful Gabrielle mentioned, I'm Emily. My pronouns are she, her. I am a former special ed teacher, and I say that loud and proud. Spent 10 years in DC public schools, and I left to found two different companies because one's not enough. The first, which I'm kind of representing here today, is Left of Center, where I support neurodivergent teens and their families to really thrive through success coaching and confidence support. And then also through my business 1111 Wellness, where I do more of my school-based work. And that was aimed at helping with teacher retention so that we can sustain some wonderful educators and so that our neurodivergent kiddos get access to wonderful people year over year.
It makes me so happy. Because here's what makes me happy. You are a professional who has prioritized their own nervous system. And in so doing, not that it's not wonderful to go into a school and help your caseload on year to year basis, but in so doing, you are helping the people who are helping the people maintain their own nervous systems and not run into burnout.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal. And the reason I kind of say all that up front is because today we are going to be talking about preserving our own nervous systems. And as is often the case, I ask the guests before we come on, what do people most need to know that they don't know? And you had a really great answer. And so you said some version of it. I didn't record it. Let's say it again.
Yeah.
What do people need to know that they don't quite understand?
So people really need to know that if you want a neurodivergent kid to thrive, you have to look at yourself first. And that can be a very scary process. And when I say self, I don't mean that in the word that we think about from our culture. I think about self as like you, but also as you as part of a community, as you as part of systems. And so all of those things have to be looked at if we really want our neurodivergent kiddos to thrive, but specifically our neurodivergent teens, because they are the most fun. Which is why I picked specifically to work with them. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about their brains too today and why I love working with them so much.
So let's start there because I think, teens do merit their own special attention because of what's going on in their brains. And I am usually the first person to say, as a parent, parenting teens, and in my case, I mean later teens, like after they turned 17, actually, has been very, very challenging.
Yeah.
Let's talk about their brains first. What's happening in adolescence that we need to know about?
Okay. So first of all, if you don't know Dan Siegel, you should. And you should definitely read his book, Brainstorm. And sure, it should be on both of our shelves. But I think my favorite part about teenage brains is whether you like this or not, they are either risk seeking or risk averse. And I share both because we've definitely seen a shift post pandemic around kids who are trying a lot of new kind of quote unquote wild things, and then kids who are really scared of trying anything new at all. And the reason why I love the teenage brain is because it's trying to figure out its own identity as separate from whoever their caregivers are. And it does that in a lot of really interesting ways, some nicer than others. And so I think what's really important for us to know about the teenage brain is that like pushing away is the key part of it, whether the kid is going out and doing more risky behavior or sitting in their room and refusing to socialize. It's kind of two sides of the same coin, which is that fear of failure. And especially for neurodivergent kids who have typically experienced, 5 to 10 times more failure because of the systems they're a part of, that threshold becomes even riskier for them. And so that's something I love to talk with parents about, especially in my one-on-one coaching. And then when I go to middle school and high schools to talk with teachers, it's always really fun to do some of the brain science stuff because they're like, oh, got it. That's why he called me that when I said that thing. Like,
And
yeah,
listen, what a gift you're giving people, right? Because like your kid calls you a name, a very rude, very personal sounding, really bad name.
yeah,
And with a teeny bit of information about, oh yeah, no, this is neurological, not behavioral, which
yeah,
I feel like I say that a lot these days. This is neurological, not behavioral.
yeah.
um, we can have a totally different response. We can allow ourselves to have a totally different response. Number one that feels better to us. And number two, that might keep us in relationship with said teen. I want to
Correct.
talk a little bit. I don't know if this is the right time, so you just tell me, how do we keep in relationship with teens?
You know, it's an illustrious question. It's one of my favorite. So, two pieces of this. One, stop trying. No, no, really, I mean, part of this is letting go of control, which is one of the hardest things for humans to do because biologically, we're not supposed to, right? Like, especially whether we're a parent or even a teacher or a caregiver, right? Like, our main job as a human brain is to keep ourselves alive and then also typically the people we love alive too. And so to let this process happen is terrifying and it's very counterintuitive. So I say that to say that the most important thing you can have to build a relationship with your teen is to have your own practices for yourself on how to navigate those feelings. And as I said before, the most important thing for me is community, right? Like we have a lot of focus on the self, right? We talk about self-care, we talk about therapy, which are all great things, right? I love a deep breath. And my one of my favorite quotes I use in every training is shouting self-care at people who need community care is how we fail people.
Say that again, please. And I'm going to plug in my lamp, which became unplugged earlier. Say it again.
Right. So Nikita Valliero, who's a Muslim scholar, she says self-care, shouting self-care at people who need community care is how we fail people. And actually, when I found that quote, that was the same month that I started my 1111 wellness business for teacher retention. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what this is. We've been yelling at people to take a bath, but we haven't figured out like why they need to take so many baths. And I think like that is a huge piece in developing relationships with teens is that one, you have your own support systems where you can process all of the very normal feelings about how tough it is to raise any teenager. And then on top of that, the complexity of raising a neurodivergent teen. And then secondly, and the reason I say this is because your teens are then going to watch you do that and be like, oh, that's how you build safe friendships. That's how you go to a book club. That's how you invite people to go out to dinner. And the other thing I'll say about like how do you build a teen relationship is you show them, you don't tell them. It's my favorite part about working with them. I could talk till I'm blue in the face about like you should have a calendar, right? But the minute I show them my goals with like, oh, I'm trying to get off my phone one out of two times that I pick it up. You got any ideas for me? They're like, oh, girl, I got you. And I'm like, see, showing them instead of telling them, huge, a lot of more progress and a lot more positive relationship with them.
You're embedding another one that I'll call out. I'm sure you're aware is letting them be the expert.
Oh, it's so
Right?
hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah,
We know so much more and they make terrible decisions.
all the time.
And yet, like, and again, this is like child development generally, like adolescence generally. And when you have a neurodivergent adolescent, you are dealing with kind of extra layers of stuff, right? Where skills are not at a chronological age level, for example, where you've got skills, some skills are way above, some skills are way below. It's hard to navigate that, particularly as a parent. And somehow we still want them to make good decisions. You know what? Sometimes the curriculum demands that they make a really bad decision and
Yep,
learn from it.
that's right. That's right.
But that means we got to deal with our own feelings about them not doing the right thing. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can like, again, and part of this is a podcast. We're going to sit here and talk about this, but parents actually have to do that.
Yeah.
Like the talking part, it only will take you so far.
Correct. Correct. And, and I'll say this, especially coming from a classroom setting, right? Like when you have 28, now that we are very inclusive friendly, especially in like public school landscapes, right? When you have 28 children, maybe 12 or 13 of them have an individualized education program, and maybe 13 different disabilities as well along with that, right? Like that is a lot of emotional regulation needed. And that same rule applies to classrooms as it does to parents. And I think the piece that we often miss is that you can't, again, you're going to hear me say this a million times. You cannot do that by yourself, and you're not supposed to do that by yourself. So part of this being okay with failure is also knowing that your teen should have a community around them, because, we think about this like with my nieces and nephews, right? There, I have one niece who's getting into that teenage year. She's not going to tell her mom everything. She has a wonderful relationship with her mother, and her mother is an amazing woman, and it's her mom. Like, so we want to establish right now, as she's in those preteen years, like, hey, come on over to TT and TO, right? Like, we'll walk you through these things. And that's actually a very healthy role to have in your life. And I think we've become so isolated, especially post-pandemic and just in our culture, where we forget that that's actually a great place for kids to fail, is to know that, okay, well, I don't just have to fail in front of my mom or my dad or my grandma. I can fail with my auntie, and like she'll probably have like a funny story of like her failing, and it doesn't feel as serious. And I think that's true for educators too, is that like knowing that there's like a supportive network and training available to help them navigate what this can look like. It just takes away a lot of that pressure of like, you have to figure this out. You need to be calm. You need to, do all of the right things. Because you
Yeah.
have to be able to fail too.
Oh, snap. Yes. It's funny, as you were talking, I was like, I was having that like kind of call and response of like, but it's my job,
Yeah.
right? And what if what if we could be like, yeah, I mean, maybe society is telling you it's your job, maybe it's set up that way. And if we go back a little bit, yeah, there were aunties and uncles and cousins and grandparents and people in the community. And again, this isn't about like, sometimes when people do this, I kind of like, oh yeah, and we all used to live in Mayberry and nobody had a cell phone and blah, blah, blah. And in all seriousness,
Yeah.
like if you saw somebody's kid somewhere where they shouldn't have been making a bad decision, you would have gone over to them and said, does your mother know you're here? Or do your parents know where you are?
Yeah.
Right. And so, and again, not that, the other stuff aside,
Yeah.
it's not just, and you and I talk to stressed out parents all the time who are like trying to own every decision that their kids are making. And it's not fair. You're right.
And speaking of failure, it's a setup to feel like a failure all the time, which like from a nervous system perspective, which is so much of what my coaching is, like one, that doesn't want to make you try anything new ever. And two, like the mindset and the way our brain develops around always feeling not good about who we are and what we're doing, it just is crummy. And it really shuts down our brain to new learning. It closes opportunities. And I have parents all the time who are like, I can't believe they do that with you. Like I told right? Or same thing with teachers when I, go to schools. Like, I can't believe that you got into blah, blah, blah. And I am not a magical, like, maybe I do carry around fairy dust. Like,
I mean,
there's,
you kind of are magical, but keep going.
there's a little bit of magic, I think, involved in some of this process, but through hard-won lessons, which I'll share too, because I think it's important. We can preach this all day, and people on the other side of the call are gonna be like, yeah, but you haven't lived my life, right? Which is totally reasonable. You should doubt me until I tell you my story.
I literally had a parent ask me this, like, have you lived what I'm living? From this, like, energetically, like, whoa, this is yours. You have to have this. It was like, And so keep talking because I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. And so, for me, that experience it's twofold, right? It's growing up as a child who was super empathetic and extremely sensitive. And I had wonderful parents who had no idea what the hell to do with that because, they were raised by immigrants who feelings didn't, there was no room for feelings. We just got to get to work and we got to figure it out. And thank God they did that because now I can do what I do every single day, right? But I didn't really I grew up in a very small, very white, very rural town. And so I was a strange alien to a lot of folks. And I felt that very early on, which made me develop the chameleon coping mechanism of oh, if I say this thing or if I have the two polos from wherever, which
Pop the
noted
collar.
for those of us who grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, I was never allowed to have American Eagle because we couldn't afford those ones. So I had to get the Aeropostale, which is it's a whole thing. I tell the teens I work with that now, and they're like, oh my God, you're so ridiculous. I'm like, well, just know that I lived this life. Um, but that was kind of my first experience with othering from a personal level, which is what made me go into education because I was like, I really could have used an adult who got what was happening and said girl, you're good the way you are. Stop doing this whole weird leopard thing. Okay. And teaching me how to stand up for myself and to be true to my value, right? That it would have saved me a lot of money in therapy. And then the second piece was graduate school. So I got my undergrad in elementary and special ed, taught for a couple years, was like, whoa, I need something else because I do not have the behavioral training. And I was working at the time in Ward 5 in DC public schools, teaching second grade inclusion, where I had 32 kids, 13 with IEPs, because they're like, you have both degrees, so you should just
Have
teach both
them
at the same
to have
time.
them all together all the time.
I
Mhm.
was like, I don't think this is legal or how it works, but sure. So I went back to graduate school and got my master's in working with kids with emotional behavior disturbances because I figured, right, if I learn about the most extreme version of behavior from young people, then I'll be good to go. What I didn't know is that I was going to learn some very unhealthy systemic practices against children's behavior, especially children with disabilities, which included things like restraint and just a lot of punishment and consequencing that didn't make sense. And so what happened for me that year is I had a nervous breakdown because my values were here and my actions were here. And I didn't have any skills to know one, how to say what was happening, and two, how to bridge that divide. So
Can I
that's
just
when
pause
parents
here?
give me their story. I'm like, girl, I got you.
I want to pause here for just a second because when you're saying your values were on one side of the equation and your training was on the other, the part of that equation was having grown up not understanding that you have agency and power and a say.
Yeah.
And if we're then flipping that for parents to understand, okay, this is your child has strengths and needs, but your child is your child and they get a say.
Yeah.
um that's like there so much of what led up to you experiencing that, which obviously it always had to happen because it did.
Yeah.
And also part of the work that you and I do, I think, is trying to head that off a little bit or maybe a lot. um,
Yeah. For
right,
everybody.
by making it clear. And for example, for me, it's literally to do an entire therapy session, speech therapy session, when the child is telling me no,
Yep.
like, and maybe for months,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And parents get very upset about that. They're like, well, they need to do what you ask them to do because you're trying to help them. I'm like, no, 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 I'm helping them plenty right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. 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 I call it on my website putting black beans in brownies. That's my favorite strategy is I know it tastes like a brownie, but there is a bean in there and there's fiber and it's good for you. And I think, but again, I take having that experience of being inside a system that didn't know any better in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, right? It has given me such gave me a lot of tools that I had to use, right? Like going to therapy, medication management, all of these things that I now work with so many families on. But it also helped me to do exactly what you just said was like, I had to figure out how to advocate for what was real for me and what I knew to be true about working with young people and the power that comes with giving them agency and voice and confidence, and the power that comes when I did that. I think that was really crucial, and I feel very privileged to have had that experience, because I had medical insurance and I had, like some examples of other folks who had gone to therapy. So I think that's a big reason I want to participate in what I call like the kind of the circles of support. Right. I love working one-on-one with kids and I will never give that up, mostly because they're hilarious and they are, especially as teenagers, are totally unhinged. But because like I know so much more influence can come when we work with all of the systems that are connected with them too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Give us like you promised me stories. Give me a good story.
Oh, how many hours do we have?
Oh man.
Let's tell a good story that is like one of those examples of black beans and brownies. So working with a kiddo with ADHD and autism, which is like the best combo ever. You get a little bit of hyperfixation with a lot of VDA, and I just, struggling a lot with this is a favorite, the screen time piece, right? And it's a huge part of what we're experiencing as a society and as a culture. And of course, parents were like, this is unhinged, right? Like there's so much screen time, there's no personal interaction. And, in some ways that is true, right? Like it is kind of egregious how many hours a day some of us spend on our screens. Um, and so the mom called and she was like, this is what's happening. I need help, blah, blah, blah. And so I gently had to say, I was like, yeah, it's really, really hard. Um, and we have, a good relationship. I was like, do you know what your daily screen time is? She was like, I knew you were going to say that. Emily, I just knew it. And I was like, just asking for a friend. And so the intervention becomes, right? Like, and it's twofold. This doesn't mean we just like let the kids off the hook and they're like, well, you're on too much screen, so let them do whatever they want. But it can become like a collaborative effort of like, oh, this is a thing that we're both struggling with. This is a thing we both need to work on. So like, let's make some adjustments based on that. And the cool part is it gets to be, like you said, with the kid being the expert, they get to boss their parent around a little bit. It was like, you're not supposed to be on your phone. It's TV show time. And we agreed that we would not have phones during that time. So, and in working with the kid, the black bean is they're learning about like, self-reliance and self-discipline and how much time do I want to spend on this thing? Why am I going to this thing? When do I, right? Like they're learning all of those skills. But rather than it being like, you're the problem and you need to fix it because your mom called me and she's mad that you're always on your phone, it becomes, how do we work on this together? And, shockingly, there's like positive results that happen. And that does bring people closer because when you work together on something at the same time, it doesn't feel so much like a you're bad and you need to work on it. It feels like, oh, everybody has stuff that they would like to get better at, and I can do that too.
It's so interesting. This is kind of back to your initial thing, right? When we stop needing someone else's behavior to make us feel better,
Yeah.
then we get into collaboration because for so many, I mean, lots of people come to see me, they're like, they want to just, can you just make my kid not do the thing that makes me mad?
Yeah. Reasonable. I get that.
It seems very reasonable, honestly. Yeah. Like I call people, I'm like, can you make my husband not do the thing that makes me mad?
100%.
And sadly, this is not how humans operate. It's very, very, very sad to me. because the world would
Did,
be.
did you did you ever hear that quote from Michelle Obama? It was like I think it was like 10 years ago about talking about Brock and she was like, "Yeah, I brought him to couples therapy because I was ready for him to be fixed." And then we showed up and the lady was like, "So tell me about you." And she was like, "This isn't about me. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Girl, that is exactly all of us."
It's exactly all of us. And so what's interesting is like, okay, now we if when I can, and I'll bring it down, because mostly I work with littles, but it's like when you can let your kid decide what Lego piece to use next,
Hmm.
right? Or like what they want to have for a snack, or and again, this is all within like developmental, okay, capabilities, and can they handle the flexibility? Yes, but like
Right.
when you can allow them to be the expert,
Hmm.
that's a number one. People are so uncomfortable.
Oh
And then
yeah.
I'm like, this is good news. This is how
Hmm.
your child feels 97% of the time.
Correct.
And they're
Correct.
like, oh,
Yeah. Not so fun, is it?
it's not so fun. But the amount of cooperation and collaboration that can then occur, to your point in the story,
Right.
like is really great. And people
Yeah.
feel so much better.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, yeah, and there's boundaries with that, right? Like which I think is so like as much as our and a lot of folks, a lot of parents and a lot of schools especially when they come to me for training will be like I just feel like the kids push up against everything, right? And I teach this one specific process called abstract goals, which, if you go on my LinkedIn, you can find other times I've talked about it. But essentially, it's literally the process of asking why whenever you do something. And teenagers need that. And especially when we talk about their development, one of the ways that they're trying to form their identity is to figure out why things matter and why it's important to them. That's how they're going to find like their passions, what they're good at, what they hate, right? Like, and that's such an important time to be able to develop that. It's also why they're so obsessed with their friends, or on the opposite, why they're so obsessed with the internet, because they're getting a lot of those whys in places that are not their immediate caregiving facility. And so in the trainings, when teachers will bring me that question of like, well, why do they always have to know why? And I'm like, because that's their brain trying to form a value around it. And, when we think about especially neurodivergent brains and having like an interest-based nervous system, like that's so important because if you're not interested, it's going to be really hard to pull off that motivation. And that's always a fascinating piece because most of the adults have never had that access, right? And it's foreign and it's scary because a lot of them never had that opportunity. So some of this is like also reclaiming your inner teenager. And I'll talk about that with them too, is like you also get to have a say about your own boundaries, right? Like if your kid is thinking you're their on-demand chauffeur, you have book club. You have, friends dinner and you love them so much, but you have these containers around your life to keep yourself healthy and happy and sane. And that is a really okay thing. And you're actually teaching them through that boundary too.
I just want to point out the energy and the blitheness with which you just said, like, nope, I've got book group. It rather than where parents usually start, which is, well, I have book group, so you're just going to have to be flexible, and I don't need you to ask me 100 times because I have a thing and I deserve to have a thing, right?
Yeah.
Notice the energetic difference
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
because your kid sure as hell will notice, right? And that's just an invitation. The way that I did that is an invitation for them to argue.
Oh,
And
100%.
that's an invitation that you're actually providing.
Hmm.
Rather than you can be upset, I'm not upset
Yeah.
because this is how things be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I always want to call it out when I see it
Yeah.
because I think that people don't understand. I think that parents think they have to be a doormat or they have to like assert their rights no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a middle ground. There
Right?
is, there's a place in between those two things. Yeah.
But it's
100%.
interesting to me, and I tell this to my, I don't know, tell me what you say about this, but I say to parents all the time, I'm like, if your brain is coming up with only two options, it's lying to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
there's 100 different ways in the middle to how to handle that particular, the particular, like, mom, can you take me to the mall? No, I have book group situation.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, and it reminds me of like, speaking of my man, Dan Siegel again, I feel like I'm promoting him, even though I would love to meet him. So Dan Siegel, if you ever see this, I am your fangirl. But I teach a lot about like flipping your lid, right? And I teach this for kids, which for those of you who don't know, flipping your lid is the process of essentially like the brain that we have in common with our animal brothers and sisters, which is three options of fight, flight, and freeze, which is what you just described, right? When you're the kid is like, I need a ride. And you're like, I'm going to book club, right? Like this here, versus our like developed, loving, understanding prefrontal cortex when our lid is on. And I teach that again to these different concentric circles of schools and of parents and to kids to help us start to understand one, to not take so many things so personally. Like 90% of the time, behavior has nothing to do with the other person. Like it really just doesn't. And I can say that as somebody who can be very unkind to my fiance if I am hungry. Like I've done a lot of therapy and meditated a lot, so it still happens. But I think, that understanding again from a neuroscience perspective what's happening in the brain just helps us to not take things so personally and to not get into that mode of like you said, there's a right and wrong because from a therapeutic lens, right? Like that kind of thinking means you're here.
yep.
Because if you're not able to come up with multiple solutions, like you and like I don't know, a gerbil are real closely related, right? They know like it's time to eat or it's not. Like and once if we catch ourselves as humans in that kind of black and white thinking, it's a good indicator that something has gotten triggered and we need to do something to reset ourselves to get back to kind of square one.
Yep. Yep. And that's when all those body based, take a breath, take a walk, take a whatever, take a pause, take a bath,
Yeah.
call a
Yeah.
friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Anything that gets you back, yes, back into your body, back to yourself, back into your community where you can have a little bit of rest.
Yeah.
Um, oof. Okay. Well, Emily, true to form, you and I could go all day. But we can't. So, if people want to learn more about you and the work that they do, where should they go?
Yes. So first and foremost, always go to LinkedIn. That's where I put up like random tips, tricks, things that I'm doing. They can also visit me at leftofcentercoaching.com. If you're interested in the parent and student and school-based support work for neurodivergent teens specifically. And then if you're looking for some of that training I talked about with adults and school-based, 1111wellness.com is more of the school-facing stuff. But regardless, I love to meet people. If you couldn't tell, I'm like a golden retriever. Somebody called me that in my softball team. Um, so I love meeting new people. I would love to have a coffee chat with you and hear about your story. And I'm just really grateful for this opportunity to come chat with a fellow like-minded human.
It is always a delight to talk to you, and I've so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.